Welcome to People. Welcome to Next Science People Tomorrow. I was waiting for something else to happen there. I'm Matt Kaplan, your host for another excursion into the science and technology of the future and how they will change our society, our culture, and what it means to be human. We're back at Southern California Public Radio's Crawford Family Forum with a nearly full house and three truly outstanding guests. Our past shows have examined everything from interstellar travel to artificial intelligence, but this time it's personal. Here's a picture of the first personal technology device developed by a design professional. It never needed to be recharged. It had no moving parts to wear out. No FCC approval was required. It was remarkably effective after following a minimal learning curve, and each one was a unique work of functional art. Sadly, no Bluetooth. Boy, have we come a long ways, with stops along the way for the pocket watch, for Dick Tracy's two-way wrist radio, and the Star Trek flip phone, communicator, excuse me. Now we seem to be headed where no one has gone before, technology that isn't just along for the ride, but that actually becomes part of our being. And this outcome is profoundly exciting to many and profoundly disturbing to others who may see our future looking something like this. On the other hand, and I mean that literally, assimilation promises many advantages. It may even save your life, as we'll hear in a few minutes. To begin tonight's discussion, I want to introduce somebody who has been writing about this stuff for 2 decades now. His work has won numerous journalistic honors, including the 2014 American Society of Business Press Editor's Gold Award for impact and investigative reporting. In addition to innovative technology, his beat at Computer World includes cloud computing and enterprise applications, outsourcing government IT policies, data centers, and IT workforce issues. I read his stuff all the time. Please help me welcome Senior Editor Patrick Thibodeau. Pat?
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be seeing you virtually from the East Coast here.
Yeah, and it's kind of appropriate, don't you think, that you're coming in on this show about personal technology via Skype, which can be a very personal form of technology, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
We've got some very impersonal technology, at least a little bit of a conversation about that. More industrial technology that you've brought along a shot of, but we're going to get to that much later in the program. I know you've brought 2 examples of personal technology, and they may sort of be pathfinders for what's to come in our future. And our purpose tonight is not simply to show off real and prototypical devices, but we do have to share a few. So what's special about these shades, these sunglasses that we've just popped up on the screen?
Well, the sunglasses illustrate why you should hate people who talk about the Internet of Things, because people are going to look at those and say, I don't need connected sunglasses. But when I'm done explaining, which will take 1 second, why you will own connected sunglasses someday, it's going to kind of make sense. These sunglasses are really interesting. It's a new product that's being developed, and it illustrates the type of product that you're going to see. In fact, this product is going to be ubiquitous in everything. And the reason is the technology is stunningly cheap. It only costs quarters to $1 or $2 to actually enable something to be connected to the internet. And these components are so small that they can be embedded in these sunglasses in a way that you don't see them. There's no wires sticking out of these sunglasses. There's nothing there to let you know that it is a connected device. But inside they have an integrated circuit, they have some software, they have a power source. And what I particularly like about these sunglasses is they use solar power to get the power source. And the company that makes them is called Zukuri. And their whole marketing pitch is you'll never lose these sunglasses, because if you misplace them somewhere in your house, you just pull up your app and it will tell you, oh, they're in the couch or they're in the desk drawer or something. You'll be able to figure it out, and pretty quickly. So the beautiful thing here is that even if you say, well, there is no reason or no way on the planet I'm going to go out and buy connected sunglasses, in time, it's completely logical that glass makers universally will begin to incorporate this technology because one, it really won't add any real cost, and two, they're going to want to stay competitive with every other person.
You know what else I like about these? If you wear them, unlike Google Glasses, nobody's going to come up and stick a geek sign on your back.
Oh yes, you're safe there. It's your little secret.
How many of you heard Larry Mantle's segment about personal technology on Monday? Was very good, and one of our guests who will be coming up in a few minutes was part of that. One of Larry's guests talked about this next example of wearable technology, which we'll put up on the screen. What do we have here, Pat?
This illustrates a shirt that's made by Athos, and they define it as smart activewear. And essentially, it measures muscle activity, heart rate, and breathing. And if you're into sports, it will give you an awful lot of data about your performance and over time. So I think what this clothing illustrates is how comfortable and how fitting and how embedded these technologies can be in another, in something like a shirt. Although there is a little size egg, something about the size of maybe 3/4, that provides a power source for 10 hours. But that can be put, I think, anywhere on the clothes. But it's a nice illustration of where we're going to go in connected technologies.
And the key here, the key word, I guess, in your opinion, is connected. It's that Internet of Things. Everything talks to everything else in the future.
Yes, I mean, the definition of a definition of the Internet of Things is two things communicating for your benefit. If they aren't communicating for your benefit, you're basically in a Skynet end of the world situation. But that's the whole point of it. And so for some reason, they're going to have a reason to communicate with one another.
Skynet, huh? I prefer Colossus, the Forbin project myself, but let me bring another guest into this conversation, and it's somebody who actually comes up with these devices. Here's the bio you'll find on his website for his Bay Area design studio, New Deal Design. Gadi Amit is the designer behind some of the most innovative and lasting technology projects created over the last decade, including the Lytro camera, Google's, I don't know if it's Era or ARA modular phone, we'll ask him, and this thing that I have on my wrist, right below my watch there, that I bet a few of you also own a version of. He was named Master of Design in 2010 by Fast Company magazine. Gadi believes in working from the inside out to find products' true architecture and cultural grounding. He started New Deal to bring approachable design excellence to a wider audience and has become a leading voice in the field by working to advance this belief and craft objects that stand above the fray. Please welcome Gadi Amit. Sit right here, Gadi. Gadi, welcome to the show, first of all.
Hi there.
We'll get your microphone up in place there.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Oh, we're very happy to have you. He just flew down from the Bay Area. Unfortunately, the plane he was on was not quite as reliable as most of our personal technology nowadays. It was a little bit late, but you made it.
Yeah, it was traffic control. They gave us, we had to wait in San Francisco until we could take off.
I could have looked it up, I'm sure, on my phone. Listen, there's a piece of, also on the website, it has your company's manifesto, your mission, and it says, good happens here. And I get the feeling that you mean that on several levels.
Yeah, so, there's been a lot of discussions of what is the role of design in the world today, and we've been dealing a lot with technology and products that are typically relegated within the design world to be considered to be, let's say, commercial. And we one day came to realize that actually people love the products we do, and they do bring a lot of benefits to people, both medical but also a lot of joy. And we decided that we'll be a little bit more proud of what we do, and we do good, and we should be proud of that, because in design circles sometimes there's an attempt to sort of belittle work with technology as if it's has less to do with humanity or social
There's a phrase in the bio that I just read: true architecture and cultural grounding. What do you mean by that?
So it's a very interesting process in the last, say, decade or two. It used to be that engineers or technologists will hand over to designers something and ask them to wrap it nicely. And what we've been doing lately in the last few years is actually kind of a switch. The type of problems we get today require the designers to figure out where to put the boards, where to put the sensors, what type of battery or what size of battery you can have, what kind of interaction you can afford and you can't afford having a screen or not, and then how to place it on the human body somehow. And then beyond that, how do you connect it to a variety of social interactions, whether it is a device or a service that garners some kind of sharing or building of a virtual community and so on. And it's all connected, intertwined in a very complex manner. So effectively today, in many cases, we set more or less the product definition, if you wish. Mm-hmm. Not that we are given a wish list, but through our experimentation, we actually show and tell and interact, and there's a beautiful dialogue between us and the clients who work with New Deal, and eventually we create the product definition. That's a completely new era for designers like me today. It wasn't like that 10 or 15 years ago.
I'm going to come back to that relationship you have with the client much farther into the show. Yeah. But I know you brought along some other images of some of the other products that you've created, which we only have a few seconds to show off. Now, first of all, so that thing below my wrist there, the Fitbit, that's one of yours? You got one too?
Yep, we designed it for Fitbit, and we actually helped Fitbit come to life 7 years ago. And this is actually what you see on the screen is the first Fitbit. With a very strong gesture of flower that you'll know that you achieved the day's goal in walking. Yeah,
I like it. Next one.
That's another one. We've done a few.
Probably don't want to hit too many jelly beans if you're worried about your fitness. But and after that, the whole family of devices.
Yeah, we've done quite a few of them. Yeah.
Now, one that, some parents might be thinking about. What's this little guy wearing?
So what you see here is a new breed of baby monitors, and it's actually a device called Sproutling that is attached to the baby, and it's talking to a base station that is monitoring the whole nursery. And it listens whether there's an ambient noise and the temperature and so on is correct and so on. So,
we'll go on to the next image here that's related to that.
Yeah, so you see that. So there's a correlation, or there's a communication between the device that is on the baby to the base station, which looks a little bit like a plate, or actually it has a charger and so on. And there is an app, and the app allows you to walk around and get some feed about what's going to happen. I think Sproutling is a wonderful company. They're trying to predict, for instance, how long the baby is going to sleep. So that's going to be nice to see that.
Boy, that's something any parent I know, certainly my experience, would have been useful. Yeah. There have to be moms and dads out there who say, that device is never going to touch one of my children.
It's totally legitimate, but at the same time, when I grew up as a baby, we didn't have baby monitors, and now I don't think any parent will allow herself or himself not to have a baby monitor. So there is obviously that rejection of technology that is there, and we try as designers to really understand where it comes from. In this case, I guess there's going to be concern about, let's say, the delicate skin of the baby. So how do we deal with that? So we actually address these issues.
And at the same time, what happens with all these resistance is eventually people either reject the product altogether or actually jump on the wagon and join everyone. And that's the path that we've seen with just about everything around us, digital.
Got one more to look at now.
Sure.
We've got a few more
Okay.
later.
Yeah.
Oh, and there is the app as well. And it's a medical device, but an amazingly simple medical device, but apparently one that's quite effective. We can go on to the next of these slides. There it is. And it's stuck right on somebody like a Band-Aid. And if you go to the next shot here, and there it is. What does it actually do?
So it's a device, it's a small device called Insuline, and it's actually marketed in Europe today. It is for insulin-taking diabetics, and it allows them to consume less insulin, and the insulin is actually dispersed a lot faster. I think it's about half the speed of regular insulin. And it's all done by hitting the area of injection, usually on the abdomen. And that allows, initiates capillary flow, and that actually activates that speeds and so on. And it's very effective. I think they already have many thousands, I don't remember exactly the number of users, and they've recorded a significant drop in insulin use, which is extremely expensive medicine. And another thing which is more important to me is that the feeling of freedom and control over your metabolism through the day is something that those patients feel very much empowered because of the say accessibility or the fast acting insulin and so on.
It's a perfect lead-in, I think, to our third and final guest. She is someone who sees much more than efficiency and convenience and the potential for personal technology. Leslie Saxon says she wants to turn healthcare into a heroic adventure. She is professor of medicine at USC's Keck School of Medicine and the executive director of the USC Center for Body Computing, which she founded in 2010. The center brings together leading experts and researchers from nearly every discipline across the university to create the future of fully integrated, connected medicine. There's that word again. The work includes development of not just wearable, but implantable technology and software that measure and share medical data. But that's really just the start. Please welcome Dr. Leslie Saxon. Hi, Leslie. Thanks for joining us. And,
Pleasure.
All right, we're ready to go. What's the ultimate goal? Why did you start the Center for Body Computing?
I started relatively organically. I'm an interventional cardiologist who deals in arrhythmia disorders and sudden cardiac death. It's an area of interest of mine. And I implant defibrillators that can shock people out of abnormal heart rhythms. And in about 2008, those devices became capable of wireless transmission, meaning if you had one, it could be connected to a network daily when you went home and dumped data. And these devices are $30,000 incredibly amazing therapeutic computers. So suddenly I realized the potential of that. At the same time, the indications for those devices really increased, so I was spending a huge amount of time implanting them and not seeing patients. And I really wanted to provide a virtual care and then advance the understanding and development of that technology. So I said, well, if we can wire this, we can wire everything, and we can provide virtual care everywhere. At the same time, the music industry and everything else was changing, right? In 2000, something like 70% of the music market were CDs, and then now it's not, right? It's digital. So I started the center with that in mind, seeing that disruption, because I really like music also, and saying maybe we can predict and get a little more control than the music industry had about this crazy change, and maybe we can democratize medicine in a way that really enfranchises the patient, because digital is about democratization and connectivity is about democratizing information or music or whatever. And then maybe we can build all the AI, the artificial intelligence behind this stuff, and it could be driven by implantable or wearable sensors, so we'd be like our cars. You know, we'd be able to get a notification to predict when we're going to get sick, or a child, or, and then, you know, think of all the efficiency there.
Preventive maintenance. But an interesting thing about these implantable defibrillators, which, you know, we've got an ex-vice president of the United States whose life has probably been saved by them. They work autonomously, right? I mean, they can. They don't wait for a doctor to say, okay, time to administer a shock.
Yeah, that's right. What we like to say is it's like an emergency room in your chest. So it's there if you need it. And it you know, in the case of shocking your heart out of a life-threatening heart rhythm, that's really important because that needs to happen within seconds. You know, if you have sudden cardiac death outside of a hospital, the chances of living are very low, surviving that at all. So with a defibrillator, the chances are very, very high. So
there is a product that you're developing in collaboration with another group, a company, and we have a video of that. We're going to show a few seconds of it now. Let's go ahead and roll that. We'll see if we can get that fixed, and we'll show it again in a couple of moments. We're going to talk about that device, of course, Leslie, but one of the things that I find so interesting about the center is that, as I said in my intro of you, it is so interdisciplinary. You've got, it sounds like, everybody on campus working on this.
yeah, I think you heard Gotti talk about it too. So when you're going to talk about the consumerization of medical care and being able to allow everyone to get their own EKG on demand, that's really powerful. But you have to think a lot about what is that experience? What's the UI, UX of that? You know, even
UI as user interface.
user experience, and even things as elegant and cool and well-designed as the Fitbit, a lot of the data on wearables is that use falls off because people kind of learn themselves. So how do you keep that engaging? And we think you do that by allowing people to continually tell their healthcare story or that of a loved one. Or you integrate these biometrics into things people do all the time. If it's Instagram, we developed an app where you can attach your heart rate to a photo, and that's kind of an abstract aesthetic experience, Instagram, but has enormous use, particularly among young people. So imagine then your body tattoo as an expression of your soul or how you're feeling. If you're a young person about a photo, then suddenly you have real EKGs on 30 million 13-year-olds. That is an important public health. Public health can achieve that. We will discover many things and prevent many things and save many lives.
I think, are we ready to try the video again? Here we go. Let's take a look.
Check your heart health anywhere, anytime. It's easy with a live ECG from AliveCor. To instantly record your heart rate and ECG, that's the electrical activity of your heart. Just rest your fingers on the AliveCor heart monitor and find out right away if atrial fibrillation is detected, so you and your physician can better understand and manage your heart health.
That's pretty amazing. We're not just talking about something that's checking your pulse here. This is a real EKG machine, the thing that my father, an MD, used to be this huge device in his office.
And the reason that we're so excited about this technology is it's real. You know, we do a lot of monitoring patients, athletes, and the public, and if you have a heart rate monitor that says your heart rate's 220, or I'm monitoring an athlete on the field to increase his or her performance, it may be 220, but I only know that if I have the EKG to validate it, or maybe it's just loose on their body, So this allows us to validate it and make important diagnoses before bad events happen, and we have many of those examples, but one of the things we're doing is studying this in the general public, so we're giving away 5,000 to anyone. Anyone in the audience can participate in our study by signing our digital consent form. Get your EKG whenever you want. It takes a 30-second EKG, ports it to a cloud, and you can pull it down at will or port it to your doctor or wherever you need it. But see, it's so profound because what you're doing, or who's ever using this, is creating a larger health record than anyone ever has seen or has. So if you're listening on the radio, just go to our USC bodycomputingcenter.org and hook on the AliveCor site.
And we have a nice surprise for the folks here in the audience, because you actually have a flyer about this. But we also have on screen for the webcast audience the information if you want to join this study and actually get your own AliveCor heart monitor and join this study. And is this something that even the biggest medical technology companies are jumping into?
What I would say, we're at a disruptive time in medicine, so there will be, the interlopers. Who is going to be the Amazon.com of medicine? Will it be a medical device or pharma company? Will it come from somewhere else like Amazon.com, who decides they want to get into medicine? I don't know. But I think that medical companies, whether they're making devices or drugs, are increasingly realizing that they're selling to the patient now, not just the doctor or the hospital. So if you make insulin, you're not just making insulin, you're managing diabetes. And so they are reorienting themselves in that regard, which is a very positive thing. And they're looking for applications and tools to help people manage their disease.
So really, maybe for all three of you, now I swear this is true. I was prepping for this show last night, doing my research, and bing, bing, email comes in from Fitbit informing me that I had taken 24,949 steps in the last 3 days, and that's just how far I walked, which is what the Fitbit does best, I think. So the privacy implications of a device like the one we just saw, the live ECG, they're pretty clear and no doubt disturbing to many people. You know, what do you say to people who are concerned about putting their heart and maybe other bodily functions online? Leslie, if you want to start.
There's nothing more private and sacrosanct than your medical information. I think people have to realize that there are enormous breaches now with non-liquid information, but now that information becomes liquid, that's a risk, right? When antibiotics were developed that have extended life, for years in people and really revolutionized medicine, people said, oh, don't do that. We're going to get antibiotic resistance. It's going to be horrible. We're going to have horrible killer infections. And guess what? They were right. But antibiotics made a huge difference. So I would use the same argument here. I would say bad things are most likely going to happen. We're going to have to correct them. We need a governance around this that's prospective. Whether we'll get that or not, I have no idea. But hopefully the good and the promise it will outweigh, for global health, not just first world health, global health. I mean, I could reach anyone in the world with these tools.
Gotti?
I would just join the same sentiment. I think there's something else that should be taken into account, that today you give away a lot of information, and with that potentially privacy, but you also can control it a little bit more. We tend to focus on the user end of privacy, but there is a lot of privacy, we'd say, violation or potential hacking that is happening in the back rooms of medical institutions, insurance companies, and so on and so forth. And much of it we may not know. The story of Sony in the last few days. So I think we should take it with a grain of salt that privacy is a very important aspect. We need to gain knowledge or data only on relevant activities. I don't think there is much secret in my EKG, for instance. I don't know. And I would gladly share it, and it's up to me to decide to share it for something that seems to be very helpful and could prevent a catastrophic event. So I think this is a personal decision each one of us will do. And there are going to be protocols, and we should have this discussion. It's good that we have a discussion. I do think that, for instance, 2014 was somewhat a kind of a pivotal year in terms of our discussion on privacy, the NSA stories, and so on. So it's good to continue having this discussion, and I think the more discussion we'll have, we'll get to a finer, tuned solution.
Matt, a more nuanced problem almost is that, let's say we just are collecting data on everything all the time, and even me, as been doing arrhythmia work, heart rate work for 25 years. Because we're recording so much on so many different populations all the time, even when I see this data, whether it's on an athlete who we're suddenly monitoring 24/7 or a high-end heart patient, I don't know what it means because I'm not used to seeing it. So is it dangerous? Is it normal? Is it abnormal? We're going to have to reset a lot, and it's going to take a while to define that. And so it's hard to know. It's hard to know if it's dangerous or not until you start to collect events and put the pieces together. The insights are there, and we're seeing things that we're greatly surprised by. Even myself, whether I pick up, I'm monitoring somebody else on the tennis court where I'm playing, I've had enormous insights with these on-demand, diagnostics, but I don't always know what they mean.
Because In the past, if you got an
Never seen
EKG,
it.
ECG, it happened in the doctor's office.
laying flat. Now
Yeah,
we're getting enormous data inside the heart, outside the heart, the lungs, and it's all the time part is the really interesting thing.
Pat, you may follow the challenges that this presents more closely than anybody else up here. What do you think of all this?
One of the early uses of the internet, and I'm not talking the Internet of Things, I'm talking about the internet even before there was a World Wide Web, was medical support groups. People with common conditions would exchange emails and form these little, information sharing communities. And those are some of the biggest uses online today is medical sharing. You make a trade-off. You get your email out there, even use your name. It doesn't really matter. You're getting valuable information. The real issue is you want to make sure that we have sufficient laws to ensure that you aren't discriminated on employment or housing or credit because your information somehow, in some capacity, got out there.
So it sounds like for all three of you, you believe if the proper policies are put in place, the benefits of this kind of wireless physiological monitoring and even intervention potentially far outweigh the risks. Gotti?
Categorically. I mean, I think Leslie mentioned it, and something was said in somewhat implicit way. The amount of research you can do with this data is unbelievable. So I had a person walking into my office and discussing some brain sensing device. And they calculated that if they gave away 5,000 of these, they'll have more brain activity data within half a year than in the whole history of humankind.
Wow.
So this is, just figure out, how many hours of people sitting in MRI scanned can you get? And now you get an athlete, let's say, running on a tennis court with EKG monitored. It's nothing that we had before. So this is maybe I'm not in position to say so, but I think it looks like it's a completely different magnitude of data to research.
Leslie, you got a question when you were on with Larry Mantle on KPCC a couple of days ago from a listener. Probably can handle this very quickly. And the listener said, is there a danger that this constant monitoring is going to turn us all into hypochondriacs? We're all going to be obsessed with, checking our heart function and making sure that our MRIs are in tune.
I think a lot of the fear around medicine and illness, a lot has to do with lack of education. Patients have been shut out of even their own data in this patriarchal system that we have. And so for me, it's a lot about creating health literacy. And I have my patients on a lot of stuff. And guess what? Even the most worried, they actually get reassured because they start to learn themselves. They feel empowered. They feel autonomous. They partner with me instead of me preaching to them. The whole thing becomes less fearful. They can start to become, as my brother's a movie producer, we work a lot on this interface piece. Instead of medical care being the horror movie that you're starring in where you're getting probed and your worst nightmares, you start to become the hero of your healthcare story. More in control, more educated, more able to achieve outcomes that you're actually in control of. And I think that's incredibly important. That exists in everything else. We can control our media, we can control our finances, control real estate. We look at we have access to all that now. So that's just happening now in medicine. How it happens is the fun part. Hopefully it happens with partnerships, disruptive technology, but with real partnerships from core experts, and not,
So I just want to add something to that. Talking about the glut of information that is thrown at the users, the funny thing that in the Silicon Valley now, the talking point about wearables is that people stop using them after a while. So what happens, I think, people at the beginning are very in tune, they look into the information, they look into the second chart and third chart and so on. What happened after 3 or 4 or 6 months is that they get used to it and slowly they keep some level of interest that is very, I would call it glanceable, and change some or modify some lifestyle, elements, and sometimes they even stop using the device altogether. So there is a level of, I'd say, disengagement that we also should take into account. Now, just to counter the point, I mean, people would be presented with a ton of data, and they'll take only what they care about. And even that, after a while, will dwindle down, and eventually they'll see that as some kind of background noise.
One of the challenges around that the social networks were mentioned. We developed, for instance, a quit smoking app where it was fairly successful. And the two things that people identified as successful were they had a social network, so they felt like smoking, they could contact somebody. The second thing was they had to quantify their cigarettes. So it's like quantifying your food. Oh my God, I didn't realize I ate that much. I didn't realize I smoked that much.
Yep.
But the powerful thing to this point was that even people who quit smoking stayed in the app for the social network, like the AA model, because they wanted to help other people and evangelize for that. And that is incredibly powerful, that if that kind of thing could be digitized.
Pat, I want to make sure you can get in on this, although I have a question for you as well on a related area. But go ahead. Did you have a comment?
In terms of the use of wearable devices, I live in Washington, and every morning if you get on the metro, everybody whips out their cell phone. It looks like a herd of gazelles all bent down in the savannah eating grass. I mean, they're just staring at their cell phone. So you talk about how technology has changed human behavior. Wham! Yeah, that people might wear some things and might not wear others, I imagine. But it's still going to have an enormous impact because you're still going to have large segments of the population buying and using these things. And it's going to be something to behold.
So here's that related topic that I mentioned, Pat. You wrote, it was just last month, you wrote a piece titled Murder by Internet. Explain that to us. What were you talking about?
Well, I wasn't suggesting this.
But it does sound like a good novel.
This actually, the security folks, a couple security folks are beginning to predict that this is going to be on the horizon. And they believe that the devices, some devices, particularly in the medical area, will eventually be hacked. And they'll be used as a means of extortion. We will turn off your pacemaker if you don't pay us, or as a means of just spreading chaos. You can take it with a huge grain of salt. But the security researchers have a pretty good track record of being accurate about how destructive these hackers can be.
Leslie, those defibrillators. I can imagine a few people out there who might want to get at that one that's in that former vice president.
Yeah, that was actually the topic of a Homeland, the Showtime Homeland thing that actually the vice president was killed by a terrorist hacking into his pacemaker. And they showed a commercial wireless thing in the show. When I talk to experts about particularly that issue with implantable heart devices that I know pretty well, many people will say, well, it's easier just to shoot them than to actually hack in. So I think there are other ways, to eliminate people that are less difficult to achieve, yeah.
Gotti, I don't know if you've designed any defibrillators, but are these the sorts of concerns that you take into mind when a product is put together, or is that more on the client side, making sure it's secure and nobody's going to get in there and mess around with, Sony Pictures defibrillator?
It's definitely on the client side for us, but I got to say that I haven't gone to that depth of medical devices yet, even though we work with some key medical device manufacturing companies and so on. I'm interested in something that is a little softer. The ability, so there is hardcore medicine that is absolutely going to be immensely changed in hopefully positive ways, it looks like it, and so on. But there are a lot of things that we ordinary people can do with our bodies and with our wellness in general by devices that are somewhat more consumer-oriented or more innocuous from a medical perspective. So we talked about all these pedometers. There was a fitness device that you showed earlier. And there are more and more devices like that that are out there. And they typically have a rather simple sensor, not as sophisticated as we saw here. And they're typically giving you a very basic advice on lifestyle. Yet, they are changing lifestyle in a way that on a grander scale is medically important. So people who use these wearables are losing weight. And they tend to walk more, and that is creating a better cardiovascular health and so on. And that is another aspect of medicine, if you wish. It's more like a public medicine and so on. And the interesting thing for me is, can we get any meaningful data, I would say medically meaningful data, back to the researchers? Because as much as we have defibrillators, there are probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in the world. We may have next year with Apple Watch coming, we may have tens of millions of devices that pick heart rate in this country.
I want to talk about that software development kit that Apple's about to come out with. But before we do that, Pat, I'm going back to that made me think for some reason of those sunglasses that you showed us up front. And you made the point that they're made with very inexpensive components. Isn't that key if we're going to share the benefits of these personal technology devices, not just in affluent countries like this, but across the world?
That's one of the really interesting parts of this whole thing, is that some people argue that we've reached a particular point in history where everything is coming together. The networks, the technology, all the pieces are there. They're cheap, they're getting cheaper, and they're very accessible. Even people with do-it-yourself kits at home can do it. And the period of time that I think it might be close to, and this just isn't me, this is others who are saying this, but if you just go back in history a little, and 1994, the Netscape browser arrives. And so we have the World Wide Web for the first time. And what happened after that? Yahoo was formed in 94, Amazon in 95, eBay in 95, Netflix in 97, Google in 98. Some of the more foundational companies of what's going on today were formed within a period of 5 years. And many others were formed during that period. And then we had the social networks arrive a few years later. But we may be at a similar point right now where all this energy is coming together, and people like panelists here on the stage are creating these new products and starting new things, which may well be, the Googles and the big products and the big things in the future. But that's how I kind of see it right now.
Gadi, do you want to make sure that this technology is not just for people in the first world, but gets out there into the third world?
Absolutely. That's the reason I said we do good. Part of what we do is getting these things low cost and getting them in mass production. That brings their costs tremendously down. I mean, we're talking about ability to take technology that not so long ago was $1,500, $2,000, and now it's sub-$100. These are very important economics if we want to get to the third world. I mean, I'm involved with another project called the Google Aura, and that is very much about that, creating a very open architecture for third parties to get, for instance, medical sensors in a mobile platform that allows it to get under $100 costs. So in order to deliver the benefits of first world to the third world, you really need to industrialize and get better design practices that allow the product to be just right, concise, and therefore cost effective. And that's what happened, for instance, with mobile phones. I mean, people tend to forget, but there's something interesting that we have nearly 5 billion mobile phones today on the planet. It's unbelievable. And this happened through that revolution of industrialized and you know, better design and so on and so forth.
So one laptop per child used to be the big thing. Maybe now one smartphone per human being.
It's funny, laptops are so passé, you know.
I mean,
it was a big
they
deal
say
one
that
back then.
every time you have Mary Meeker from Kleiner Perkins is just a storied industry analyst as well. She talks about how you go from, say, desktop to laptop to mobile. If mobile's the dominant computing platform, that you increase the user base tenfold. So if everybody in the world has a phone, I think Gotti's talking about is everybody in the world's going to have an internet-connected phone, then everybody in the world has health care. If you know.
There's a great science fiction story I read once, which we don't have time to go into, about the distant future, and everybody who can afford it wears a ring. And that ring is not just connected to the rest of the world. It's a dialysis machine. It monitors all bodily functions and hormone levels, and becomes quite a valuable commodity in places like the third world. But that's a story for another day. Leslie, are you familiar with what Apple is going to be revealing in
Well, you know,
hopefully just a few weeks?
They're, some people would say fanatically secretive, but I would say that, you know, from what I understand and the estimates, if there are going to be 10 million Americans in 2014 who have a sensor, maybe that's going to be 20 because of the Apple product. Maybe they'll double that. Maybe it'll be more. It's very interesting, as I understand it, their policy, they've always been strong privacy advocates. So I think it will be the consumer's complete control over what data to share. So you could share potentially your weight with your doctor, but not your blood pressure. You know, it's not backed up in an organized way. It lives on the phone. So while that is very protective of individuals' desire, it doesn't lead to these massive predictive global health analytics, right? It's not some big database you can de-identify and do research in. So how this all ends up panning out will be, fascinating to see. And companies that already have stuff out there, like Samsung, they're trying to, that's a massive company, evolve different strategies for allowing researchers and stuff to look at that. But really what you want and need to do the things we're talking about is the data in almost one place. You need to be able to mash that up with environmental data of hazards and other data sets where you can really start to say, children are at risk in this country, right now, and you can do things, whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Pat, are you familiar with this health kit that Apple's going to be coming out with?
I'm familiar with some of the standards issues that are kind of sweeping around it. The big problem, or a looming problem, is that for the Internet of Things, or for all these connected devices to really work, and for us to really develop a really rich environment, the vendors have to agree on communication protocols and standards of interoperability. And right now, we're a long way from that. And there's a very real risk that Apple or Google or Samsung or a number of other companies could go ahead and create like islands of Internet of Things and little standards wars and try to play their market muscle as far as it can go. So this is why we're still in the early days of this.
Early days, and how? You said how 94, the web is only 20 years old. It was 30 years ago this month that I got my first personal computer. And it was hopelessly primitive by today's standards. I mean, primitive software, no web, no internet. The monitor couldn't show me a picture, even a monochrome picture. Gotti, do you think we're at a similar primitive stage with personal technology?
Absolutely. You mentioned this ring that does all these wonderful things. I'm not sure about dialysis, but as far as sensing, I don't think we are there that far away. I actually think that it's probably 5 years from now that you could get a device that gives you all the vitals in a medical grade, in a form factor, as we call it in our world, that is that small and that easily assimilated into everyone's life.
A personal tricorder, for anyone who doesn't know already that I'm a Trekkie.
It's not not far-fetched. Totally not far-fetched. And the reason I'm saying that is the speed in which I see the accuracy of sensors going is just phenomenal. It's really, we're just at the beginning of that.
Leslie, you agree?
Yeah, and ideally it's seamless. You don't have to do anything, right? Maybe it's a little implantable or injectable, and it's good for 2 or 3 years, and it's wireless, and you don't even do anything. It's just like there. It's
in our studio, for instance, we did a project. It's a conceptual project. How would you interact with an implantable? Because one of the things that we tend to think about implantables is there is no interaction, but maybe you should have some level of interaction with implantables. We call it Project Underskin, and dealt a lot with things under your skin and on your hand. But we are that close.
It's a very cool device, by the way. I did see some images that we're not using tonight, but it's implanted right here. Shake hands with somebody. You've just exchanged information. The thought leader Peter Diamandis behind the X Prize, including the Tricorder X Prize, he just had a small device implanted in his wrist. He's not even sure what it's for, but he just thought it would be cool to do. Do you think that we're very far away from the acceptance of not just stuff that we wear on our wrists, but is inside our bodies? Leslie?
Yeah. I mean, look, if it's going to help you live longer, keep you safer, and out of harm's way, why not?
I could tell you a funny story about the interaction in the studio. It's San Francisco, and I'm talking to San Francisco designers about the need for a device to be implantable. And one of the guys just came back from having a tattoo from here all the way up to here. And he's having difficulties with the concept. So I'm telling him, listen, you just tattooed the whole hand. So it's funny, he couldn't explain it to himself. How come it felt so odd?
I mean, elite athletes, they're like, give it to me yesterday. Yeah. And I think if the culture starts seeing that, some of these iconic players, et cetera, getting these things and all the data, that could really, push it through too. And
Pat, are you ready to join my dog and 2 cats with an RFID chip under your skin?
Did you ever see that movie Apollo 13, Tom Hanks? And they're all wired up, and the doctors can follow everything that's going on from Mission Control. But at one point, they just rip all those monitors off, and they've had it with the doctors. And the doctors are told to just back off. That's kind of how I feel.
I'd hate to have to dig under the skin to be able to pull them off, though. Look, looking out 30 years may be too ambitious. I want to find out from each of you. Pat, why don't you start? Where do you think we might be, or where do you hope we might be in 10 years, 15 years at the outside?
Well, this is the interesting thing. I honestly believe that if you really think about the Internet of Things, it's going to hurt your head. The problem is that when the Internet first arrived, and when people went on for the first time, they often, you read that they had epiphanies. They could understand immediately what this all meant. It just all came together. But the Internet of Things is vastly different because you're taking everything and you're embedding communications capability in it. You're embedding a way to share information. So what happens when object A can communicate with object B, C, D, E, and F? What type of new system, what type of new value, what type of new product is created out of that? And when you ask people, they don't know. They really don't. And that's why some people think that the Internet of Things may be more explosive economically than the Internet was. And the arrival of the web and all that, because there's so much potential here.
What was the quote that I heard from somebody? If you have some futurist tell you that he knows exactly where we're going to be in 5 years, he's either a liar or a fool. Leslie, where do you think, without being a liar or a fool, where do you hope we'll be in 10 years?
I mean, I hope that people have the ability to have these predictive analytics, engaging experiences around healthcare that educate them so that healthcare literacy will exceed literacy, because you can do all that. You'd have to be literate, and that we'll be able to make this giant step and really solve this, horrible issue of global health, which underlies global economics, right? So that, that's my hope.
Gadi, where is your company going to hopefully put us in maybe 10 years with the Internet of Things and personal technology?
About my company, I don't know. I mean, it's well, I'll tell you 2 or 3 things about that. So first, I mean, most of the discussion was revolving around medicine. What is happening here today with the nexus of medicine, consumer electronics, and things like 3D printing is more than revolutionary. We probably will all end up our life in some kind of a cyborg state. We will have things connected, built into us, grafted into us in one way or another. This is more or less a reality already. There are things like bioengineering. I don't know if you heard about it. You basically scan your knee, you 3D print the knee, then you take DNA and regrow your own knee so you could actually reimplant your knee back to your knee.
We did a
Something
show about
like
this,
that.
bioprinting.
So these are not far-fetched. So this is the medicine side, but I think the point about the Internet of Things is much greater. We are now in a weird situation where we got a lot of smart things that are kind of dumb because they provide a lot of data, but they don't provide enough advice, and they definitely don't have enough predictability or ability to be wise and understand where you want to go or what you want to do. So I think that is where things are going to go, from being smart to being a little bit more wise, understanding you, and flow with your life rather than disrupt your life. And I think that's where the big economic and lifestyle benefits are coming. And to some degree, on that side, people like me, designers, should be helping a lot in creating these that transformation from wisdom to from smart devices to more wise devices.
Pat, we were talking about these implantable defibrillators that can act autonomously a little while ago. Seems to me if you add radar and lasers and wheels to those, you get a self-driving car. I mean, is that, in a sense, personal technology?
Absolutely. And it's starting with big trucks.
Oh, and we have just by coincidence, we have a picture. Can we throw that up there? So here's some big dump trucks. What's going on?
Well, these are pretty cool trucks. These are autonomous trucks. They're programmed. They're using mining by a company called Rio Tinto, and they're programmed to go ahead and go to where the dirt is or the rocks and pick them up and bring them out. It's all done through some automation. It's not as sophisticated as what Google's driverless cars are. But here's one of the interesting things, and it's actually, this point was raised in the discussion about the medical devices, is the medical industry and a lot of other industries are farther ahead than the consumer market in developing Internet of Things technologies. One of the things that's going on with these big engines is there's one company, for instance, I was talking to, SAS, and they've developed a technology that can determine with 90% accuracy and 30 days in advance when a part is going to fail in a truck, and these are large trucks. This kind of predictive analytics, coupled with Internet of Things capabilities, will filter down to your personal car, your personal appliances, your stoves, everything that you own. And so you'll have this knowledge. You'll be able to take advantage of predictive analytics to know how long certain things that you own are going to last or when they're about to break down. That's going to be huge.
So on the industrial level, if not personal technology, the Internet of Things is apparently going to be essential to compete.
Every company is going to be forced to embed these technologies, even if they don't know. You take something like a weight scale, right? You buy a weight scale in a store, it's just that, a weight scale. But in the future, in the very near future, if not already, that technology is going to have a wireless transmitter, a little processor, and it's going to transmit out its data. that somebody in an app is going to use to categorize and keep track of your weight. So all of a sudden, you're not selling a weight scale anymore. You're selling an application that just happens to come with a weight scale. That's going to be how things switch around here.
Leslie, in addition to gathering and sharing information about our bodies, what will these devices be able to do for us directly, autonomously, like that defibrillator, which knows when it's time to give a shock to a heart? Do you see these devices taking autonomous action?
Yeah, I mean, that's the artificial intelligence decision support. Look, there aren't enough doctors to treat all of these patients, right? So you're going to have devices, drugs, delivery systems, whether it's an insulin pump that's a better insulin pump with a better form factor, whether it's a glucose sensor that goes with an insulin pump, whether it's a defibrillator, whether it's a company called Proteus Biomedical makes a smart pill. It knows when you take it, and it registers to a patch, and it can mash up your activity. So let's say you're schizophrenic, and you stop taking your medicine. You can go from being a banker to being a homeless person in a week and a half, right? What if your mother gets a phone call, sees that you've not taken your medicine for 2 days, or whoever cares about you, and you've been laying on the couch, and they can intervene? Those types of things are really incredible, right? That would be the kind of solution I'd see happening.
We are almost at the point where we're going to turn to the folks here in the Crawford Family Forum and ask you for your questions for our three very distinguished guests today. We'll be getting to that in just a couple of moments. Gadi, I got one more question for you, though, first. Let's say that a couple of very bright, energetic 20-somethings walk into your office, and they've got a concept for a device that's going to change the world, in their humble opinion.
It happens every day.
Every day. Is there anything that you commonly find lacking that they really haven't taken into account that you gently or not try and beat into them?
I think it's a common misconception about technology and economy or startup management to focus too much on the technology, economics, and so on, and forget the humans as part of it. So the end question of that discussion about changing the world is, how would I use it? I always make it very, very personal for them. And whether I'm asking the guys whether your girlfriend is going to use it and so on, and that always changes the discussion. And there is the application of technology, regardless of its merits, onto your personal life is complex, and there is a tendency to forget that. The humanity side of the story is really, really important.
Leslie, you mentioned the word story earlier, and how you're working with your brother, the movie producer, Ed Saxon. He's made some of my favorite movies. And that you're working with him to introduce these elements of story that hopefully are going to ensure that more of us use these devices and continue to use them. How does that all fit into the plan?
Well, storytelling has been around for a long time. It's fundamental to human beings, and there's nothing really more compelling than your healthcare story or that of a loved one. So how to allow people to tell their healthcare narrative and interact with it in ways that are compelling is a really key part of this, whether it's the information is from a sensor they don't know about or that's implanted or they're wearing or whatever it is, but that it's continuously engaging them and that they develop a set of habitual behaviors around that, and that we're integrating medicine with everything else because we can, with digital, with storytelling, with entertainment.
Gaming?
Gaming, for sure, right? I mean, many people think the way to get young people educated and connected is through gaming, since they spend so much time. Anyone with a son or a daughter, particularly a son, but also a daughter, knows how much time spent there. So that's a teachable moment. That's a moment to be able to record, which could be anything. But the point is that we're integrating medicine and diagnostics and storytelling together to try to, and design is just, obviously a huge part of that.
Let's go ahead out to the audience, as we said, here at the Crawford Family Forum. And we got a few hands up in the air. We're going to start with somebody way in the back there. Hi, sir, what's your name?
Hi, my name's Bob Silence, And this is tangentially related to the interoperation communication protocols. But getting back to the original definition of Internet of Things, you said two things communicating for your benefit. Of course, you connect a heart monitor to your cell phone, and you look at it, and that's for your benefit. But now you put that on the internet, and Google can use that to sell you something, and the NSA can use it for whatever nefarious purposes they want to use it for, and we don't necessarily know about those, and that puts us at a disadvantage. So to me, the next level would be total transparency. So in other words, so that everyone knows so everyone is the watchers. Who's watching the watchers? All of us. Now that kind of scares some people sometimes, but another way of turning that around would be to say, if there's somebody out there on whom I don't know some piece of data, it puts me at a disadvantage. So if everybody says that, that's a way of doing that. So getting back to the protocols, is anyone looking at or the idea of like an open source protocols and open source information and access, maybe only letting people use and have the benefit of this technology if they're willing to put their information out there so that they can gather their information and everyone else's information so that they can be part of that community. And if you don't want to be,
Pat, let me see if you can tackle that first.
Well, those are all good points. And there is open source. There is an open source protocol, Allseen. It's being championed by the Linux Foundation. And, but there's a difference here between, if I understand your question correctly, you're talking about the data, but you're also talking about the communications protocols. And the protocols are separate from the data. The protocols just enable the devices to communicate. What happens afterward with whatever's transmitted is an entirely different matter. And that is a very thorny problem, which your question gets at. I don't have a good answer for that, other than it's going to take a lot of diligent work by lawmakers to figure that one out.
Leslie, do you think, are we looking at a time when privacy is dead? We should all share everything?
I mean, the Google story is a great one. I think you make an excellent point. Look, we give up a lot, and everybody, how do they make these enormously successful companies make their money from selling your data? And they know, and there are multiple layers of that, and that's worth a lot. It's an information, it's not a mining economy, it's an information mining economy now. So there's huge money in that, and we give up a lot for that ruthless efficiency, right? We sign on to Google, we do a search, they know everything about us. And they prey on that, and others do as well. How transparent does that need to be? And I think there are going to be there is a backlash to that already, and there will be more, and a lot of it's appropriate, and there should be more transparency there. So who's ever going to make money off of somebody's EKG, medical data, et cetera, depending on how they make money, what are the business models? But people want this stuff for free, right? You want to do a Google search for free. You don't want to pay. You don't want to pay for a novel. You want to let Google go put the Library of Congress on and undermine publishing or media as we know it. We've given up a lot of these things. There are no journalists anymore embedded in Laos that know that we're bombing Cambodia, right? Because they don't exist. Because all it's been completely changed. So big concerns. I agree with you, and I think how this data is used and sold and monetized is enormously important.
Imagine if the Viet Cong had smartphones and were tweeting during the Vietnam War. Gotti?
I'm a little cynical about it. Actually, the more data they have, the less they know. There have been people who are trying to mine data are actually under enormous pressure to get some sense out of the data. So some fundamental basic things they can, but beyond that. So Google will send you an ad for something, and would you buy it? 99.99999% you won't buy it. So that's the story. That's the end of the story. And there's going to be data, and you got your service. My definition of the Internet of Things is slightly different. Is that we have a sensor, a connection, and advice to you. If you got the advice that you wanted or that is beneficial to you, you got your side of the bargain. And then the other guys will try to sell you something. So they're not going to sell you something outside the studio? Of course. I mean, look at the advertising industry and so on. It's pretty impressive and ugly all around us. So what?
I have some cynicism left about this as well, but and outside of cynicism, we've got some more devices to show you from Gotti. We'll get to those in a couple of minutes, but let's go right to the back there. Hi, ma'am. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Ellie, and I have worked in quality assurance, biomanufacturing for 15 years. And so the first thing that comes to my mind is, since a lot of manufacturing in the biotechnology world has gone overseas to India and China, I know how precarious it was following FDA regulations in this country. And so I'm really concerned about that aspect, especially with something like this that is so, so important. So I'm not going to ask you if you're going to take your manufacturing to Asia and China, but have you thought about this aspect, because it could lead to deaths and serious consequences?
Gotti just designs them. He doesn't build them.
But I want to answer straightforwardly. When I started my studio, New Deal Design, in 2000, we had 0 clients in San Francisco. We now have 5 young startups, I think Fitbit is beyond startup, in San Francisco, the city, that are doing things like the Sproutling, or doing Fitbit for dogs, which is Whistle, and things like that. So it's a process that I see as reindustrializing America rather than deindustrializing America.
What's it called? Reshoring, I think.
Yeah.
The return of manufacturing to the U.S. Pat, you have a comment about this?
I agree with Gotti's point about reindustrializing. In the past few years, there's been a real takeoff in something called the maker movement. And this is where people, anywhere from professional engineers to high school students, assemble these components and build devices, build robots, build sensor-enabled this and that. And it's just been a wonderful thing. And it is leading to all kinds of new startups and companies.
Anybody see the first product created by the 3D printer, which is on the International Space Station? It's pretty cool. It was in the paper just the other day. Let's take one more question from the audience for now, and then we'll look at a few more of these devices that Gotti has brought along. And I guess we're going to go right over here. Hi, sir. Your name?
Hello, my name is Trillian Smith. I'm a realtor in Pasadena. I had a question about the current state of patent law and how that has affected your ability to innovate and create things.
Boy, that's a great question. Pat, I'm going to go back to you first on this, because I think this is also something that you follow. What is the current status, and does it encourage or discourage the development of these devices?
Well, Congress is in the middle of battling patent law reform, and I think a lot is going to depend on how that turns out. But no, I don't think it's discouraging creativity in this country in a very broad level. Are the mounting number of lawsuits hurting small companies? Yes, absolutely. And unless there is some reform that can curb some of the patent trolls out there, it's going to be an ongoing problem. But I don't think it's going to stop people. It's going to take more than that.
Leslie, you want to get devices into the hands of as many people as possible. I mean, is this something that comes up as you develop the software and hardware that your center is doing?
Yeah, and I'm not an expert in any way on patent law, but I know the Supreme Court ruling in this, it was a recent one on where we're not protected, a lot of our patents are no longer protected, and software is very hard to patent anyway. So we don't have a lot of patents for those reasons.
Gotti, you must be torn. I mean, you want to get your devices out to as many people as possible, but you also want to see your clients make money off of them.
So that's actually an interesting observation. I'm not an expert on patents, but the one thing that I've seen through the years is that what makes a company succeed or fail has nothing to do with patents. It's their ability to get to market and win the market in the hearts and minds of people. That's basically it. And I know that in the background there's a lot of thought through the whole legal process. None of my clients have been involved with any at least not to my knowledge. So any patent issues? So I think it's a little exaggerated. The fear, I think the big boys, you know, Apple versus Microsoft, Microsoft versus Google and all that, they do have these turf wars, and that's what we hear a lot in the media. But at the ground level, small companies, two guys in a banjo want to start a company. Usually it's irrelevant. Just get the product to the market in the best way, and, you know, make it happen.
I hope we'll have time for a couple more questions, but I do want to show off some more products, including this first one, which will pop up on the screen, which is, you might think of as Fitbit for Fido. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's Whistle, and they do have the best model dogs. I don't know, they're like, they're so beautiful dogs. So.
And so this is, what is it monitoring? What's it?
It is a step above the human wearables. It's actually allowing you to know more information about the dog's activity through the day, including getting enough playtime and so on. We cannot get that from human wearable, enough playtime. And the other thing is that they could feed the data back to the vet, which you cannot do today because of regulation with the wearables.
So we got one more shot in this group to show off this Whistle. There it is. Nice dog. Good dog.
Yeah.
I heard at least one. Oh, I thought we'd hear a lot more of those. And there is the app that is obviously integrated with the hardware.
Yeah, made in San Francisco.
All right, now this next one I've wanted to play with since I first read about it. You photographers out there may recognize it's called the Lytro, I think.
Yeah.
Completely new form of photography.
Yeah, and that's been out there for a while. Yeah, it's a new form of photography. This device, I think, came out in 2010 and was the first of its kind. It's dealing with it's called light field imaging. It's essentially allowing you to recreate the image after it was taken, and reposition the focus and so on and so forth.
Anything you can decide whether the foreground is in focus, whether the background is in focus, and continuously adjust these. It's not three-dimensional, but it's almost like holographic.
It's you get the feeling of parallax, as if you look at the world from two eyes. So you could actually get a very good three-dimensional sense.
This last one that we'll go to now, you actually mentioned, this is you called it the Aura?
Yeah, we call it Aura. It's actually,
So tell us, this is that modular phone. And if we go to the next shot, you'll see that it is really modular. And the one after this, there are a whole bunch of components.
So that's an initiative by Google to create an open platform, if you wish, for hardware. So you could develop these module, and they could be any function, including medical or scientific function, and you could interchange them. And you can interchange them and what we call hot swappability, which means that if you're having a call on your phone and the battery is drained, you could actually pop the battery, replace it within seconds, and the call won't stop.
Leslie, it seems like you ought to be working on this. I mean, you could pop out the EKG module and stick in the EEG module.
We need to talk more.
Actually, so one of the things they insisted on having, for instance, was pulse oximetry module. So when they designed that, I mean, Paul and his team at Google, then Motorola, now Google, insisted on us showing that we could actually have pulse oximetry as part of the modules. And so on.
Let's go back out to the audience, and with just a few minutes left for this evening's next People Science Tomorrow program, right up in the front here. Hi, sir. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Todd Kerner from Hermosa Beach, and the word I haven't heard yet is nanotechnology, but my question is not about that, actually. Many years ago, there was this fad about biofeedback, and I wonder if now we have the diagnostic tools to measure our own body's messages to ourselves. Will doctors be telling patients really to treat themselves, essentially calm yourself down, slow down your heartbeat, change your EKG, and use biofeedback in a more sophisticated sense to repair yourself in essence.
Leslie.
Yeah, really a couple areas we're using that. One in athletic performance. So one of the things, a pro golfer, they make or lose lots of money on the putting green, not what most of us struggle with. So their ability to kind of calm down and not get the yips and use biofeedback, that's an example in sports. In medicine, hypertension is a very common diagnosis, and almost everybody resists treatment. They feel that it's white coat hypertension. It almost never is. It's always that they're just hypertensive. But think about allowing a patient to go and try that biofeedback, which works like 30% of the time anyway. It will work. And if it doesn't work, that patient is much more apt to come to you back, and it's not a fight anymore. They're saying, yeah, I can't do it. If I play this, I can't control it, or to get on that second drug, and that will literally prevent, heart attacks and strokes and be hugely powerful. So I think biofeedback in a lot of different scenarios is going to be great.
Pat, are you at all surprised that so much of the conversation tonight about personal technology has been dominated by personal healthcare technology?
Oh, not at all. I mean, it is perhaps the most compelling use. And it is going to be, it's so logical. If your doctor suggests that you use this technology, you're going to give it serious consideration. If your vendor, if Best Buy suggests that you buy this watch, you're going to maybe think about it.
I'm going to hit delete is probably what I'm going to do. We are just about out of time. Maybe time for one more question. And it looks like we have, ma'am, she's been waiting quite a while. Hi there, what's your name?
Becky, my name's Becky. I was just wondering about those glasses that Patrick Thibodeau showed at the beginning. He said they were connected. Why?
The sunglasses.
Yeah.
Why are they connected?
Yeah. I mean, how would you use them?
Pat?
The whole point of the glass, the connection, is essentially if you misplace them, you will call up the app, and it will be able to tell you where it is in the house, where the glasses are. You'll be able to discover them. So in other words, if the glasses have fallen, say, between your couch cushions, the app should give you a pretty good idea that that's where you're going to find them.
And what's that new device? It's a little square piece of plastic that does the same thing. If I had had one of those tucked into my favorite straw hat, I'd still have that damn hat. And it very cool device, I think.
But I could use this as an example of this problem we have now. These are quote-unquote smart, but they need to be wise. It means that as you walk towards your car, let's say, something will pop and tell you you forgot your sunglasses, and by the way, they are there, So that's a transformation from quote-unquote smart to what I call wise. They have a connection, you're going to drive, and that's where you probably will need your shades, and that's the moment where you ask yourself, where are they?
Well, my dog chews my glasses,
Yeah.
so if you could do get the dog thing with it.
Needs to give that dog a little shock, the whistle device, I think.
So the glasses will know when the dog arrives and hide.
We're about out of time, but I want to leave you with one more peek at the possible future of personal technology. Some of you have seen it. It's called Secret. But with more than 5 million YouTube views, it's anything but secret. It's not real, and there's reason to believe that it won't be real for a very, very long time. But it does demonstrate that there are still lots of innovative ideas out there with the ability to capture our imaginations. Let's take a look at just a few seconds of this demo video. So without making it too much of a commercial for this device that does not exist, and there are grave doubts about it ever existing, it has a built-in little projector, it has the sensor array, and you turn your arm into your touch screen. Now, what I want to know is, does this mean I'm going to have to shave my hairy arms? So, oh well. We are really just about out of time. I do hope that you will help me thank our guests one more time, beginning with Gadi Amit of New Deal Design. Next to him, Leslie Saxon of the Center for Body Computing. And on screen over there, Patrick Thibodeau of Computer World. Thank you all.
Thanks, Matt.
That is it for this edition of Next. We'll be back soon with another foray into the future of science, technology, and humanity. Thanks to everybody here at the Crawford Family Forum and Southern California Public Radio, especially Janice Wachi-Hurst, Dave McKeever, Liz Brown, and Haley Waters. The man at the helm here in the Crawford Family Forum is John Cohn. I'm Matt Kaplan, hoping that you enjoy the world of tomorrow. Good night, everybody.